Hi there. In this video, I want to explore the wider implications of what's happening in the Ukraine today and put it into some sort of global context, provide some sort of scrying mirror into the future, which is always a very dodgy thing to do because, you know, the answer to every oracle is death. So you can be pretty sure that everything's going to get worse, not better. But that's defeatist talk in some quarters. So my question is today, what does the TV show, science fiction TV show franchise Star Trek, the Theosophical Society, the Lucid Trust, and the United Nations Association all have in common, and indeed Marxism? Well, they all are highly influential intellectual movements, cultural, economic, political, magical even, that all want one thing, and that's they want one world. They want all the nations of humanity united under one single government or governance, I might say as well. Um, Now, I've actually put the Theosophical Society and the Lucid Trust in the wrong place, really, because the Theosophical Society is more to do with the intellectual sort of force or influence on governments. And I should have put that in the air quarter representing intellect. I say intellect because really, well, they're a sort of funny mixture of metaphor and metaphysics, and which some people may say the metaphysics lacks the intellectual rigor that is required to call something intellectual. But basically, the and Lucis Trust should be in the fire quarter because they represent an actual sort of magical power. They use actual aeonic magic to influence key players in the global scene. And they, for years and years, they've been putting up magical prayers, creating collective psyches or psychic collectives to influence the astral and to influence how people think, to bring about the agenda of one world. Star Trek, that's kind of like the cultural, emotional side of things. Um, Gene Rosenberg, um, he he had a vision. Star Trek's vision is for one world, um, and united under one government. Um, so Gene Roddenberry, one of the great sort of science fiction prophets of our time, and the creator of Star Trek, and which has had a huge influence over people, more than you might imagine. And lastly, the United Nations Association, which is the sort of practical side of things. I put that down in the Earth quarter. Supportive of the United Nations, collecting money for them. Again, a huge political lobby, powerful political lobby. And it's interesting that the UNA, United Nations Association, Lucis Trust, share a common HQ in London. And the Lucis Trust emerges from the Theosophical Society. So the only odd one out is the Star Trek franchise, and the sort of vision of Star Trek, which but they sort of, and Marxism, of course, obviously self-explanatory. hugely influential intellectual, political, social, cultural uh, lobby, power block, whatever, and sort of in the midst of a lot of this kind of one world activity, one world under communism, of course, and that's not necessarily shared by one world under Theosophical society. But anyway, the point is that all this is leading the utopian sort of dream is a one world. And I used to be a one worlder, but the choice is it United Nations one world or is it something else? If it's United Nations, then that's unity and diversity. So, it's basically people talk to each other, a think tank. I know you've got the United Nations agencies which do practical work in the world, but largely it's educational. Um, you've got people talking. Jaws better than war, as Churchill said. And despite our differences and diversity, people come together to talk about problems and to try to meet those problems before they escalate into conflict. That's the idea, anyway. And that's kind of the one world, United Nations, kind of the soft agenda, if you might, as I might call it, sort of right-hand path agenda, because people are respected and their enormous values and beliefs of each country and each region are respected. But the other agenda being followed merrily away is the United States of Earth. And that's basically United Nations. Well, nations will become defunct, basically, and you'll have United States of Europe. So people may have states, regions, but they are all under one political governance. They are all sort of assimilated into one set of norms, values, and beliefs. And I mentioned put futurism here because those norms, values, and beliefs will be largely, completely humanist, secularist, atheist, and individualist. Those are the four pillars of futurism. And futurism is basically a vision of a world of humanity united under the four pillars that I've mentioned, and everybody will be thinking the same thing, broadly speaking. I mean, it's United Nations. It's a movement towards homogeneity or homogeneous society. Whereas the United Nations, as it's presently constituted, is maintains heterogeneous society, where you have different societies within humanity. But the United Nations, the United States of the Earth, has posits one set of norms, ideas, beliefs that are all pervading, and governments all over the world are based on those norms, values, and beliefs. Humanism, atheism, secularism, and individualism. And basically, that would be your lot. And technological innovation, um, scientific research, empiricism would be the heart, would be kind of the belief. And there would be increase. There would be social order, survival, and increase in resources, an increase in efficiency of resources and resource management, to create a world, a perfect world. And basically, this might seem to you to be a fantastic idea. And I used to be a one worlder until I discovered that the agenda that was being followed by one worlders was, in fact, the United States of the Earth, not the United Nations, which respects diversity. So basically, everybody's going to be looking the same way, as it were, all have the same attitudes, millennial attitudes, you know, the kind of attitudes that you see, reflected in the Guardian, which is a newspaper in the UK. Um, or the New York Times or something like that. Liberalism comes into it as well, and monopolization, corporate power concentrated in a very few corporations, and unification, and as I say, everybody believing in the same thing, um, and that would be a utopia. So this is a utopianism, this is a utopian movement towards one world, United States of the Earth. And it's going to come in stages. United States of Europe first. Obviously, the United States of America has already been established. When I say United States of Europe, it will include Russia eventually, which is what this whole Ukrainian conflict is about. It's about getting rid of Putin. It's about having a government which is Western friendly in Russia, and eventually absorbing Russia into the European superstate. So I've got Euro Russia as a huge superstate of countries that all think the same. They all have the same norms, values, and beliefs, generally speaking. And then, of course, say China. China, India, these are the countries that under China, and China will provide all the physical technology, and the USA provides the military, and the Euro Russia will provide all the financial power, and some manufacturing power as well. And of course, then we mustn't forget the OBE, the Old British Empire, which will still be around. Britain left Europe, obviously, because it wanted to maintain its OBE status, its Old British Empire status, and it wants to control huge financial power in the world through sterling and through the financial mile in inner London. Which is basically the power, where the power of Britain is based, really. So OBE could be the sort of fourth player, but I've actually put just three players because eventually there'll just be three players: Euro Russia, China, and the USA. And I've put in 1984, George Orwell's 1984 here, because there's a sort of a nod here to his scenario where you just had three huge superstates, and constantly at war with each other, by the way. And so, fighting over the Earth's resources, basically. And sometimes they make different alliances with each other. And one day, Euro Russia will be the great enemy, and then another day, China will be the great enemy, and so on and so forth. And of course, having enemies means that governments can control people through fear. So one of these huge superpowers will be the enemy, and then the next will be the next superpower that will be the enemy of the other two, and so that's sort of useful to have as well. You have to have an enemy. You have to have conflict. Marxism is about conflict, and Marxism will be sort of at the basis of everything. Conflict algorithm, if you like, political algorithm. And eventually, of course, the idea is that all these superstates will eventually come together to create this wonderful one world. Or we will all end it'll all end in nuclear tears. We'll have a nuclear winter. There'll be a nuclear war. Because, of course, these three great power blocks will be fighting over the resources of the world. China is trying to get Africa. Antarctica is a vast resource, which Euro Russia, China, and the USA will be after. So there might be wars over that. At the various edges of these superpowers, there will be zones of conflict in the world. And so it'd be very dangerous, and hence the title of this, The Dangerous Road to One World. It's fraught with danger. And in the end, just also in 1984, the individual will be squashed under corporate power. And the individual will be squashed under the one set of norms, values, and beliefs that will exist by that time. So it'll be an authoritarian society. It'll be a society where people spy on each other, as we're already spied upon now on the internet. So everybody will be connected, and the TV, Big Brother will be able to look into your house and look into your mind. And so this sort of scenario is, but this scenario in itself is only probable. It's well, it's possible, but is it very probable? Or will it all end in nuclear tears, a nuclear war, of course? Um, and We'll be living in a post-apocalyptic society of many little tribes and communities surviving as best they can, sort of thing. Post-nuclear winter time. Famine and disease and wars and little wars everywhere. And everything will be broken apart and breaking up and dancing, as one might say. But in a way, this scenario is very pessimistic, as sort of it's kind of a metaphor for what Gnostics kind of believe about this world, which is that they don't love or trust this world. We might accept this world and acquiesce to it to a certain degree, and even appreciate the beauty of nature, for example, or the efficiency of nature in many ways. But we don't love or trust this world. And when I say this world, I mean the multi-universe of the demiurge, because basically everything, the multi-universe is corrupted. By which I mean that a bad, it's flawed basically from the jump. It's corrupting because the scarcity of this world means that people lose their humanity very quickly when they're faced with scarce resources. And it's corruptible in the sense that the stability becomes instability, and things sort of have tendency to fall into entropy, tend to collapse in on themselves. And talking of corrupted, I used to be a circle dancer, and the thing about circle dancing is if one person puts a foot wrong, then it's quite likely that the whole dance will collapse and that the whole group will sort of collide with each other and fall into a heap in the center of the room, which has often happened to me because somebody's put a foot wrong. And you can't help it put a foot wrong in this world because this is how the world is engineered for people to put wrong foots forward. And the whole thing is flawed, which of course accounts for its beauty, which people appreciate very much. And it's the flaw of the diamond, which makes the diamond, kind of thing. So we have contradiction as well, which is inherent. Another C, the four C's. We have contradiction inherent in this world, and basically Gnostics, that because of all this, tend to be very skeptical and cynical about utopianism and futurism. I mean, futurism sees only one path, and that's upwards and more and expanding and uniting, and getting rid of war and poverty and all those things that people want and say they want. Go on this world and they all say, I want world peace. Who doesn't? You can't really argue with that. State, I want world peace. But it will be at the cost of freedom and individualism. And it will be at the cost of many things, in fact. Perhaps even the cost of the very evolution that futurism seeks. Because without conflict, you can't have the same kind of evolution. So if you have a world which is perfect, in inverted commas, it probably won't evolve. It'll stagnate and be vulnerable to external attack and external scarcities as they crop up. You see, so that's why utopianism. But that's why the Gnostic attitude towards utopianism and futurism and this one world agenda, which is being actively followed, generated by such groups as Theosophical Society, Lucid Trust, United Nations Association, and even Star Trek as a sort of cultural movement, and Marxism, full of good intentions, but the road to ruin is filled with good intentions. That's the point to take away from this. However, there is no doubt about it that the United Nations, when it respects diversity and respects non-interference, yeah, well, the Security Council do nothing but interfere, but never mind. The principle of non-interference and diversity respected and talking rather than fighting is perhaps one which could be managed. So it's not that you throw utopianism out of the window and say, oh, let's all just be savages, because that's what we are. We can certainly better ourselves. We can certainly de-savage ourselves to a certain extent, and we should. And as individuals, we should live ethically within our families, at least. If we can't extend ethics to beyond the family, well, at least we could start there, or start within ourselves, even better. And we could make ourselves better, but we can't make ourselves perfect. That's the point. And Marxism and the one world movement and liberalism and secularism and atheism and humanism and individualism, they seek perfection. That's the problem. And they won't find it. Utopianism just seeks perfection. They seek a total perfect solution, a one fit solution to everything. And that's not how this world is and how it works. And all you do is you end up becoming brutal tyrants and being more savage. So you kind of you de-civilize yourself by following this path to perfection within an imperfect world. You see, and so I don't know what all this means. I think Gnostics are kind of witnesses to what's going on in the world, and basically all you can do is to say to people, well, it'll probably all end in tears. It will. This one world campaign or movement or whatever it is, and it'll either never happen or it'll result in nuclear war. It'll overreach itself, over ambition. Basically, is the problem with utopianism. Big ideas, but not the resources to carry through those big ideas, and then people start blaming each other and blaming the Jews, and then we have Stalin and we have Pol Pot, and we have people that mean well to begin with, but after 3 years it all just collapses because this world is full of contradiction. It's corrupted, it's corrupting, and it's corruptible. And when you understand that, you can confine your betterment, if you like, your personal betterment, to within your neighbourhood, and that's about as far as you might go, really. A little further, as long as you respect diversity and you respect other people's points of view, you might go a little bit further. You might even have United Nations, as it were, but you won't have a United States of the Earth. You won't have an Earth world. And if you do have that eventually, it'll be at a price. And God knows what that price might be. So when we look at wars and when we look at the Ukrainian situation, when we look at the efforts of the European Union, the United States of Europe, as it might be, as fledgling, want to bring Russia. They want to get rid of Putin. They want to bring Russia in. They want to get rid of all cultural diversity. This is the point. They want to get rid of people's cultural identity and roots. Very, very important, because when people don't have roots, they don't have anything to fall back on. They don't have anything to clutch to. And in a sense, see, culturalism, cultural diversity stands in the way of futurism. Futurism wants everybody to think the same way, but people don't think the same way. So they've got to be either forced or coerced in some way, or, coerced really, economically coerced into obedience. and into sort of the corporate way of looking at the world, which by that time will be thoroughly millennial, and will have its own norms, values, and beliefs, and will impose one set of norms, values, and beliefs on the world, on everybody. And that's the objection to One World campaign. That's why one has to remain extremely cynical when faced with any kind of utopianism, whatever it is, vegan utopianism, Marxist utopianism, even laissez-faire utopianism, even Thatcherite utopianism, even the kind of utopianism that wants capitalism to be super capitalism. One has to be very cynical in the face of these movements and great ideas and agendas that people are following, because you really don't know where they might lead you, and maybe you wouldn't want to know where these movements might lead you. And history has already shown that the Marxist utopia has led us into very, very dark areas of the human psyche. And so, um, you know, what can you do? You can only look at what's going on, or rather, I don't look. I don't take much notice of any wars that are going on, or crises of that nature. I don't really take notice of it. I concentrate on my own development, and the development of the people that might happen to chance on my videos, and my channel and my book and my free book, which is downloadable from my webpage. So that's all you can do really. You can't do any more. You can't be any more ambitious than that. Um, I mean, this world has my basic attention. It doesn't have my full attention. It has my basic attention. It has all the attention that it deserves. Do you know what I mean? And no more. So that's basically sort of the message that I want you to take away from this video, and indeed from what's happening around the world, and in the Ukraine at present, and indeed all the future conflicts and things that happen. You're looking at China expanding into Africa. The USA will expand into South America. There'll be lots of things going on, and if you look very carefully, you might discern utopianism, or utopian agenda being followed by the things that happen. But all these things are also just tendencies, and nothing is written in stone. I mean, anything can happen, and probably will. We live this world is a chaotic place. It's ruled by chaos, and anything can happen to trip people up on their way to some kind of utopian wonderland. So, and then when they get there, of course, it turns into a utopian nightmare, or a dystopian nightmare, one might say, actually. So that's basically all you can do, and you go into yourself, and you go into your silence, and you go into your family. You take care of your family, and you take care of your neighborhood, and the people next door to you, and you respect diversity of opinion, and people's freedoms, and just hope that that is sort of enough to jog along until such time as redemption becomes not only impossible but inevitable and immediate.